everyone! I'm so excited because we get to do the fun stuff. In this video, we're going to walk through how to build a simple report. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to come over to this reports folder here. It's really just the outermost folder for all of your queries. And to get started, we're just going to create a new query. So we're going to right click on that folder, say create new report. And then this window pops up and you can give a name to your report. I'm going to say my person report and hit save and close. So every time you create a new report, it shows up at the bottom of the list with a unique ID. So my person report is down here. Since it's a little hard to see at the very bottom of the screen, I'm going to drag it up a little farther in the reports list here. So maybe with these other M reports. And you can see the ID is the same. So when I open up my report, the first thing that you'll notice is that it doesn't have nearly the stuff that our financial report did from earlier, right? There's no data set, no tables, no columns, and definitely no views. So we're going to have to build all of that and add all of the information that we want for this specific report. For this report, my main goal is going to be to create a table that just shows every person that is in the CRM component in our SiteStacker database. And maybe I'll pull some of their basic info like first name, last name, email, maybe their address, and we'll see what else we can add to it. But I'm going to start with those fields. But the very first thing that I need to do is to add a base data set to my query. Before I do that, you'll notice on the right-hand side this little exclamation point. That's just a little warning to tell you that the report's angry or something isn't quite computing correctly. In this case, whenever you create a new report, you'll always have this little exclamation point to begin with, just because there isn't any data in the query itself, and it's just expecting to see some. So once we start adding fields and columns, that will go away. So to get started on building my query, I'm going to right-click on the title and choose Add New Dataset. When I click that, it brings up this window that lets me give a title to the dataset. I like naming my datasets to remind me what kind of information I'm pulling into it. So in this case, it's person data. So I'm going to say person info. This checkbox is important. We talked about the base dataset a little bit. It's really just a container for the rest of your data. That's where you're going to pull in all of your tables and your columns from those tables. So it's like the main lens of your report. You do have the option here for an aggregate data set, but aggregate data sets are additional data sets. Not all reports have them, but all reports do have a base data set. So we're going to click that and hit save and close. So now we can see the right-hand side is starting to update. It has the name of my query in here, but it doesn't have any information yet. So now that we have our data set, I'll open that up and we can see that it comes with a list of modifiers. But the next step that we need to take is to add a table to our data set. So I'm going to right click on the data set and choose Add Model. The words model and table are interchangeable in this context. They really just mean the same thing in a database. So I'm going to click Add Model. This drop-down list gives you a window into your whole SiteStacker database. Each one of these items represents a table, and a table is another container for a bunch of different data fields. It's those data fields that we're going to use in our reports as columns. If you scroll through here, you can see the different components of your installation. You have contributions, data groups. In our case, we're looking for person information. So if I come down here to the people category, I'm going to click on this person table here. And then I'm going to save and close. So my report just updated with my new person table. My next step is going to be to add data points from this table so that we can start building our query. So now that I have a table, I'm going to right click on it and choose Add Columns. When I do that, that brings up this Add Edit window that lets you actually see into the table. You can see what data points it holds, and then you can choose directly from the table which data points you want to include into your query. So in this case, I definitely want the person's first name. So I'm going to click first name and hit save and close. Here we go. So our report updated on the right side. You can see we have first name, and then it's pulling in all of the people's names from our CRM component. If I open up the columns list on the left hand, now we can see that we have first name. So to give you a little bit of a visual connection, if I go into my admin portal, what we're looking at right now is the CRM component. This component is where all of our person data is stored, all of our donor data. So in our report, what we're doing is pulling that information into the query so we can use it. I'm going to go ahead and add a couple more fields. So I'm going to right click and add column again. I want the person's last name. Save and close. I'm going to right click, add column one more time, and I'm going to choose birthday. Save and close. Okay, so now we have a list of people. They have their first name and their last name and then their birthday. Not everybody has a birthday saved to their CRM record, so here we can see the ones that do. So this is helpful. Now I have a super simple person report that I can add views to and take those views and publish them to the dashboard for any of my staff to see. So let's go ahead and create a view real quick. I'm going to come over to our views list. Right now it's empty. I'm going to right click and choose add view. And you can name this view. This is going to be displayed on the dashboard. So for this one, I would probably just call it person basic information. Save and close. If I open up the view, the columns list is empty, but it comes with some modifiers. So what I can do to start adding columns, the view is going to look directly at what we pulled in our main query. So I'm going to right click on columns and choose add column. And up here, the format is a little different, but I'm going to click here and it gives me the same list of columns that I have in my query. So I'm going to choose first name, save and close. So now I have that in my view. You don't have to right click and choose columns every single time you want to add them to your view. You also can drag and drop, and you can even highlight a bunch of columns in your query and drag them all into your view at once. Just a little tip to make that easier. Now that we have a view existing, we can actually preview that with the little eye icon here. Click on that, a new tab opens, and this gives us a snapshot of what it'll look like on the dashboard. So just like we saw previously with our financial report, now we have the name of the report, first name, last name, birthday, all the different filters and the export options. So again, this window is super helpful to keep open while you're making updates to your report, because then you can just refresh it and see what changed, if your report is functioning the way that you want it to. So I'm going to just jump back into the reporting tool. And from here, I'm looking at the report, and the fields that we have are helpful, but I think it would be really helpful to have the person's address as well. So we don't have that information in the person table. We can double check if I right click and add column and drop down the fields that we have here. We can search, but we don't have things like street address, country, state, things like that. So if I don't have the information that I need in this specific table, that's telling me that I need to add another table to my data set. So what I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to join a table to the one that I already have. So I'm going to right click on my person table. I'm going to choose add model. Again, model and table are the same in this context. So we click on that. So this is the same list that we saw earlier when we were adding our person model. What we're going to do now is we're going to scroll back down to the person section. Here we are. And you have so many options here, but what I want to look for is their address. Now, before I choose a new table to add to my person table, we can see that there's two different addresses here. So person address many and person address one. So the words in parentheses here are going to help me differentiate between the two. When you have a person saved in your installation, obviously a person could have lived in many different places throughout their lifetime, and all of those addresses could be saved to their CRM record. So that's why we have a many address. But then we also have this default address, and the difference between the two is that Sure, maybe someone has lived in multiple places, but they actually only have one default address at a time. So that's what this table is referring to. And the word in parentheses indicates that this is a one-to-one relationship, whereas this would be a many-to-one relationship. They have many different addresses, but they only have one default address that they're living at. So we're interested in the default address. That's the most relevant one in this case. So I'm going to click on that and hit save and close. Okay, now our data set updated. We have two tables here. We have our person address joined to our person table. And because this is joined to person, it's using a left join. If I double click this again, you might notice there's a couple different join types. Left here is telling us that, hey, we have a list of people and we just want to see the addresses that are associated with those specific people. So with this new table, we actually have a whole new set of data points that we can pull into our query. So I'm going to right click and add column, and we'll see what we have. Perfect. So we've got address 1, address 2, city, zip, just about everything that we need to pull in their full address. So I will do address 1, save and close. And let's say I am interested in also knowing what state they live in. I'm going to choose location, state ID. Click that, save and close. Okay, so I want to pause here. On the right-hand side, we are seeing the live results of the query that we're pulling. When we go to location state, I think we all can notice that it's numbers instead of actual state IDs or state names. And for our report, that's not really what we want. We're not sure what these numbers mean. But if we take a closer look, we can see that we actually pulled in the state ID. So this is the ID that's assigned to the different states within the SiteStacker installation. But for our purposes, we want the name. So if I come back here, I noticed that the name of the state was not available in this table. So that tells me I need to add another table. So I'm going to right click on my person address, and I'm going to click add model, and I'm going to drop down our list. And again, this is the same list that we saw before when we were adding our previous tables, but you can see now clearly the list is much smaller. So this list is actually going to adjust based on the type of table that you're trying to join to. So in this case, we're joining to person address. These are the only other tables that are compatible with that. So if we look at what we have data groups, we have location country, and location state. So location state is the one that I want, and this makes sense. In the installation, state is actually a data group. So I'm going to click on that and hit save and close. Okay, and to give you another visual connection, I'm going to jump back into the admin portal, step out of the CRM component, and now we're talking about the data group component. So that's this one right here. And if I come in here, I'm going to find the data group called location state. So I'm going to click on that. And here you can see we have a few different columns. This is where all of the state options are located. So the columns are country, code, and name. If we jump back into our reporting tool and right click on the table to add a column, those are the same columns that we see here. So this gives you a connection point between the BI tool and the actual components that it's looking at. In our case, we want to add the name column. So if we click on that and save and close, now we can see on the right-hand side, we have the full name of the state that we're interested in. Florida, New Jersey, Indiana, etc. So the reason that we knew to click on name was because in this context, the name was referring to the location state data group, right? But in the full context of the report, name doesn't quite make sense. So we can actually relabel the column itself and just call it state. Save and close. So that column updated in the columns list and in the query itself. So now the column says state, and we can go ahead and remove location state ID because that's not very helpful for us. Okay, so we're learning how to dig deeper into the tables to get the information that we need for our reports. One other thing that I want to show you before we end this lesson is the difference between a simple column and a smart column. So far we've worked with simple columns, and you can see that they're simple columns because they have the 3 green dots. And it's called a simple column because we took it straight from a table. But if I right-click on a table, we also have this option called Add Smart Column. If I click on that, I get a different Add Edit view. So what this is letting me do is it's actually looking at all of the tables that I've pulled into the query so far, and it's giving me access to all of their data points at once. So that's unique from a simple column, right? A simple column only looks at a specific table. I can choose specific columns from it. There are cases where smart columns are super helpful. So let's go ahead and take a look at how we could build one. So far we've looked at the name of a column, how we can rename that to be whatever we need it to be in our actual report on the front end. But we also have this window here called Expression. This is where we can start dipping into MySQL. You can use this window for functions and operations and many different SQL statements. In our case, we're going to use a simple string statement. So it's going to be concat. What I want to do with this column is display first name plus the person's state. So that might look like concat first name, comma, apostrophe plus apostrophe, comma. So I got a data point from the person table, and now I'm going to pull a data point from the state table. So I'm going to click name and end parentheses. You don't need to memorize this concat statement. This is just some basic SQL logic that you can learn online. But I'm going to give my column a name. I'm going to say first name plus state. Save and close. Okay, we can see on the right side that our report updated with our new unique column. So it's pulling in the person's first name and their state and putting it together. This is just a simple example to show you what a smart column can do. But you can use smart columns in many, many different ways with many different tables and data points to pull all sorts of information or to display really custom data in your report. For our purposes, I like our little column, so I'm going to go ahead and add that along with the state column that we made earlier to our existing view. Just going to drag that in, and drag that one in too. I'm going to come back over to our tab here and refresh. And now this is the updated view that would be on our dashboard. So this was an example of creating a really basic report. It showed you all the different steps that you have to go through to add a data set and add the tables and add columns that you would then add to your view to publish on the dashboard. We looked at the difference between simple columns and smart columns too. And in our next video, we're going to look at how to use modifiers and talk about aggregate data sets. So just more ways to narrow down the information that is in your query and to modify it to your team's needs. Thank you guys.